Hi folks, I'm Alan Watt and this is Cutting Through the Matrix on December the 6th, 2015. Now, since the COP, which is the Conference of Parties 21, 21st century, is still going on, of course. It's a formality, of course, as I said last week there too. This is a continuation of last week's to show you it doesn't matter what you think they're doing there, apart from feeding themselves like pigs at a trough, which is always free, paid by the taxpayer and so on. But it's really just, they get 3 minutes to talk. 3 minutes, for those who want to talk. Most of them, their mouths are too full, chewing away there on their 15-course lunches and meals and stuff. To talks, but for those who want to talk, they get 3 minutes each. So this is not, as I said before, a debate on anything. Everything's been agreed upon way in advance by the Sherpas, the guys that do the work, legwork, building consensus, as they say. And you'll find this is just a formality. Even the term COP21 is very misleading. It's meant to be misleading because the United Nations itself, a few years ago, got so fed up with people like me and other people too, talking about Agenda 21, the agenda for the 21st century, for sustainability and, reduction of populations and all the rest of it. And they changed its name, and then it went back to the old name, Millennium Project. So really, this COP21 is just the Millennium Project dash Agenda 21 dash COP 21. It's the same agenda, and we're well on the way to it. But what I'm going to show you tonight is how it's institutionalized already throughout your societies, not just through propaganda, which is incessant, of course, even through movies and things, and even comedies, the buzzwords and terms and all the rest of it. But you'll find that it's also institutionalized through all your institutions. Your media, for one, basically, is completely institutionalized through it. Even at the BBC, I've read articles in the past where the BBC was completely on board with it, and they put out a statement saying they will push this term, and global warming, climate change, and so over and over until it's institutionalized in our vocabulary, which basically isn't for most folk. But it's through thousands of non-governmental organizations, all under the umbrella of the United Nations. And they've got various teacher unions in there too, across the world, who've implemented it through the schooling system and curriculums. You've got religious factors involved, where all the religions have been lobbied to get on board with it, and they have done it dutifully too. And you've got it through your local councils, even the tiny little villages too. You still have your mayors are all part of the Mayors Compact and so on for this climate change thing, and they're over there as well. It's everything, you see. So we're going through a formality, the COP21, and if they mention it at all on television, for instance, I don't watch TV, so I don't know. If they mention it at all, it means nothing to the general public. What does COP21 mean? A new cop show or something for, what is it? And that's why they call it Conference of Parties. It's so benign sounding, and yet it's a culmination of the agreements to do with sustainability. That's how it all started out way back with Maurice Strong and all the rest of it, with biodiversity and the animals and the Rio Summit and so on. And save the world, save the animals. The Brazilian rainforest is going to disappear. Yada yada yada, step by step by step. And then, of course, they hit upon the idea of climate change after global warming didn't live up to its expectations. So it's a whole agenda to control the world of humanity, how we live, what you'll believe. Your indoctrination, through schooling and so on, right down to eventually, as they broaden it all, into voluntary sterilization and so on. They've already had articles in the paper on that over the years, voluntary sterilization. And it'd be quite easy to get little martyrs to go forward once they've been brainwashed enough at school, and they'll show off their, their virtue, as they say, virtue signaling and all that, which is like virtue preening. Every politician uses all the right buzzwords and so on, and they're all for this and for that and so on, and they're pro this and pro that. All the correct things, as you well know. Until it's rather nauseous, isn't it? Listen to this prattle of sellouts, basically. You see, we're in such a socialist system already, with massive governments in every country, that all the different institutions that the pharma work to are all part of the same push for the same agenda. It's just one big system, you see. And politicians, and even in your local level, they want to get up the ladder into a federal level eventually, know what to say to be popular, all the politically correct things to be approved, and they get their social approval by their displays, their preening displays of virtue. So we're going through this all right now, of course, and this meeting's on right now, and it's really a farce. Just like the global meetings in the past have been farces. Well, I've read articles for years on the air again to do with the lavish, incredible meals they get. As they talk about austerity for us, you see, austerity. And then the articles that even come out with the prostitutes that we pay for, the tax money goes to pay for these prostitutes, male or female. And they've even had articles in the paper in Canada about it a few years back. Anyway, this is the farce that we go through, this display. And it's a display, the COP21, complete formality. They go there and have a great time and all the rest of it in their parties at night, and they sign the deal. It's complete formality. It's already institutionalized, and that's what I'm going to touch on tonight, to show you all the different methods by which it's already institutionalized. And regardless, even if you had some rogue character who'd conned his way up there and went to the meeting and then turned at the last minute and says, I'm not going to go along with this, you see, it wouldn't matter, even if it was a president, prime minister, because it's institutionalized through your state. In Canada, it's a province, and the local levels, and through education and everything else too. And it's still getting pushed ahead through compacts, as they call it, treaties signed between states in the US and states in Canada, things like that. Now, I think the one exception they made for the 3-minute talk was for President Obama, the first day that it opened at COP21. They gave him about 15 or 20 minutes to prattle on. And I guess that's correct, because the US will be paying most of the taxes that's going to fund all these little countries across the world. Everybody else is even more broke than the US, but the US is living completely on debt, believe you me. And in Canada, there was an article came out before all started saying Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, the new guy, will head to the COP21 climate conference in Paris with a little wind at his back. A meeting of Canada's first ministers, politicians, Monday in Ottawa. The first in almost 7 years, ended with 11 provinces and territories humming from the same environmental hymn book. So there you go. Because it's a religion, really, isn't it? As I've mentioned before. It was created to be a religion like that. And it's become more of a religion as time goes on. And I'm going to put up tonight all the articles, remember, I talk about, I always put up the links to them, and often PDFs as well. It's for the ones who are really fanatical and can really stand the drudgery of looking through all that stuff. And but it's important too for those who really want to know, you know. Most folk really don't, or they want to know the cursory stuff, and that's all. But personally, I like to get the bigger picture of it all. But this article here is actually from CFACT, it's called, Climate Fact. It says global climate trend since November 16th, 1978 is plus 0.11 centigrade per decade. That came from the University of Alabama in Huntsville. It says the troposphere has not warmed as fast as almost all climate models predict. And their models are the computers that are fed all the fake data. And it says, after 1998, the observations are likely to be below the simulated values, including, are indicating that the simulation as a whole are predicting too much warming. And that's from remote sensing systems. Then another one, satellite analysis of the upper atmosphere is more accurate and should be adopted as a standard way to monitor global temperature change. That was from NASA, and that's as far back as 1990. Then there's a robust cosmic ray global temperature relationship. And this provides further corroboration of the solar cosmic ray theory of climate of Svensmark and so on. So remember, in these computer models they're using, they claim that they're not going to use the sun. They're not using the sun at all. The sun has no effect on anything. You know. As I said before, reality is changing, right? But the sun has no effect on anything. So that's not even in the computer model. We're causing all the warming on the planet, for those that don't know it. You know. There you go. And there's a robust cosmic ray global temperature relationship. Assuming the proposed cuts are extended through 2100 but not deepened further, they result in about 0.2 degrees centigrade less warming by the end of the century compared with our estimates from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, Energy and Climate Outlook 2015. Using the peer-reviewed climate model MAGIC, it's called MAGIC. By God, it's magic already. I estimate the marginal impact of carbon reduction promise called INDCs, intended nationally determined contributions, from the EU, the USA, China and the rest of the world, along with the likely global policy output. My major findings that the total effect is very small, less than 0.05 degree centigrade difference by the end of the century. And even you can't even predict that, because they can't even predict tomorrow's weather. You know, all countries' commitments from Paris equals less than 0.05 degrees centigrade difference by the end of the century. Absolute global sea level rise is believed to be 1.7 to 1.8 millimeters a year. That's from NOAA. Tide gauge records along coastlines provide evidence that mean sea levels have risen since the late 19th century, with globally average rates of 1.33 to 1.98 millimeters per year. There's been underestimation of possible natural trends of up to 1 millimeter per year, erroneously enhancing the significance of anthropogenic footprints. And according to the new analysis of satellite data, the Antarctic ice sheet showed a net gain of 112 billion tons of ice a year from 1992 to 2001. That net gain slowed to 82 billion tons of ice per year between 2003 and 8. Antarctica is not currently contributing to sea level rise, but is taking 0.23 millimeters per year away, and that's why things go up and down in the sea, you see. And it goes on and on, but there's a lot of good studies in here, which, again, for those who already understand it all, it just simply reinforce what you know already, that the whole darn thing's a con, and it's a con on a gigantic scale for definite, predetermined reasons, and profit and gain for certain people. I'm also going to put up two skeptical climate documentary set to rock the climate debate. And it's from Anthony Watts, and it's going to come out very, very shortly. It says, CFAC will hold the world premiere of its long-awaited Climate Hustle skeptical documentary film at an invitation-only red carpet event in Paris during the United Nations COP21 International Summit on Climate Change. Featuring interviews and comments from more than 30 renowned scientists and climate experts, Climate Hustle lays out compelling evidence that devastates the global warming scare. Film host Mark Morano, founder and publisher of CFAC's award-winning Climate Depot news information service, leads viewers on a fact-finding and oftentimes hilarious journey through the propaganda-laced world of climate change claims. So we can keep our eyes open for that. But again, it doesn't matter. This is written in stone, you see. Everything's counting on this thing for the big boys that really rule the world. All the big top corporations are in on it. And they're going to get their billions of dollars. You understand, they're going to trade these carbon credits, these nothings, you know. And they're going to trade them between each other. And it's a new stock market, really. And they'll go up and down, all the rest of it. Then we'll bail them. We'll put bail-ins, as I say. And each time they start to lose money in a certain country, just like the present natural stock, well, it's not even natural, but the stock market, as you well know. And then the complete rundown for this year's historic COP21 conference. This is as a scientific community increasingly voices concerns over the pressing need for humanity to come up with more sustainable methods of living, honest and urgent global discussions are of the utmost importance. 3 minutes for a discussion. What a joke, eh? The annual COP21 conference held this year in Le Bourget, France, is one and perhaps the most promising example of a gathering of the world's most eco-conscious personalities who come together to discuss how we as humans could do better by our planet, you see. See, it isn't just in Paris. You've also got these other things going on too with all the NGOs that you help fund through your tax money, and they also get massive funding and direction and their agendas from the foundations, the tax-free foundations. So otherwise referred to as 2015 Paris Climate Conference, it unites leaders, governments, officials, scientists and influential speakers from around the world to promote global action for addressing climate change. This year's event takes place in November through December 11th and will include government representation from more than 190 nations. Close to 50,000 participants and international delegates are expected to attend. Imagine what they're going to eat in lunch through there, eh? And all their heating and all that, we all pay for, eh? That's a lot of hot air for you there. It says prior COP events with significant impacts upon history books include the first COP in Berlin in 1995, COP3 in Kyoto, where the Kyoto Protocol International Treaty was first conceptualized, COP11, which introduced the Montreal Action Plan. I mean, you understand, they didn't use the COP back then, folks. They had to make you think we're all separate, different kinds of meetings. And it says COP15 in Copenhagen, COP17 in Durban, which led to the creation of the Green Climate Fund. The Green Climate Fund, you know. And this year's event is also expected to be particularly noteworthy. It's the first time in more than 20 years that such gatherings convene with the express goal to produce a legally binding universal agreement on climate change and sustainability efforts moving forward. If this year's conference is a success, it could mean a world of change that our planet desperately needs. And it goes on to talk about some of them. It says the US has pledged to cut emissions by 26 to 28% by 2025. Some of the most crucial topics of discussion and agreements that could come out of this year's conference center around implementing new and sometimes aggressive policies with the end goal of limiting rising global temperatures to within 2 degrees centigrade. Many are hopeful that this year's undertaking can help foster real, lasting change. We'll have no change left in our pockets at all by the time they plunder us all. And a couple of key political events that will take place include the UCLG World Council. Very important, that. And the World Climate Summit, a global business, finance and government forum with more than 300 high-level speakers that will take place throughout the duration of the conference. These policy-focused events provide an opportunity for government officials and representatives to discuss their respective nations' sustainability efforts on both a small and large scale. And then they have exhibitions on the go at the same time, such as Paris for the Future. It's a movement as part of a larger effort that will extend beyond COP21 to reach stakeholders from private, academic, there you go, and non-profit, the NGO arenas, to showcase and present solutions for fighting climate change on an everyday basis. Exhibits will be held in public spaces around Paris, such as City Hall Square and the river banks of the Seine. That's a good place to have it. So if you're in there, I guess you're insane, prattling on about the weather. And we'll illustrate how Paris is taking steps to combat climate change and move our cities forward into the river, maybe. These exhibitions are open to both the general public and COP21 participants. And they've all listed them. La Galerie is another one. Solutions COP21. And business and innovation focused forums for the guys of raking all the cash from it. And then this one here, the Global Village of Alternatives. Global Village. Remember Hillary Clinton's book, The Global Village? This folk festival and temporary village is meant to provide a glimpse at the human element of COP21, as well as the possibilities for a sustainable world, showcasing alternative lifestyles in public spaces and on the street. Each crossroads, street or location will display an element of alternative living, from recycling to low-carbon transportation methods. Traffic will be banned from several streets during the duration of the event and will take place December 56 in Montreux. The event is a can't-miss occurrence that offers something for everyone. There you go. See, that's what it's going to be, your model little village of the future, where you're forced into live in these little sustainable communities. A form of collectivism, you might say. You see, that's really what it is. And there's no democracy in them. It's not meant to be democratic. And on it goes. But I'll put this up tonight as well for those who want to see all the different things that are already up there and running that help push this whole meme, you see. And again, getting back to the Global Village of Climate-Friendly Alternatives, it goes on to say this: powered by more than 500 volunteers and alternative enthusiasts from the world, the temporary Village of Alternatives will gather tens of thousands of people in the Montreux city centre. Liberated from cars on this occasion, each street or place will be devoted to an alternative lifestyle. An alternative lifestyle, I've heard that before. Visitors will, for instance, discover the relocalization street, the place of sustainable and small-scale agriculture. The low-carbon transportation avenue, I guess to give you a pair of walking shoes, or the recycling and repair square. From street to street, visitors will discover alternative lifestyles and actions from all over the world that are now contributing to a significant decrease of greenhouse gas emissions. Small-scale, local and sustainable farming, short supply chains, shared gardens, eco and shared housing, see there's your shared housing, Agenda 21, relocation of economic activities, fair trade, environmental awareness actions, energy savings, renewable energy, alternative urban planning, energy transition policies, sustainable mobility, car sharing, ethical finance, but joke, currencies, and responsible consumption. Responsible, that means no fatsos there, you see. That's what they're telling you there, folks. You're going to be on mandatory dieting and literally, I mean, you'll be on weekly weighing machines and all being recorded. Repairing and recycling, waste reductions, zero waste plans, grassroots energy and climate scenarios, work and wealth distribution. I like that. You see, so it really means redistribution. Conversion to social and ecological production initiatives, transition towns. And you thought communism was dead, eh? Mind you, the big fascists at the top run it all. The CEOs of corporations will be raking it in as you live like austere peasants. And then local to global initiative terms will be presented in the streets all day during practical workshops, pedagogical games and exhibitions held under covered stalls or big tops. And each will be invited to explore car-liberated urban spaces devoted to creative alternative lifestyles and actions that contribute to the restoration of our environment and social networks, etc., etc. It's friendly, it's fun, and it's solidarity-based. So there you go. There's your usual stuff. And the Citizen Summit for Climate. There you go. Coalition Climate 21 Climate Forum. and the Federation for Small-Scale Farmer Markets. So there you go, eh? Isn't that just wonderful? Isn't that going to be a beautiful utopia, eh? Isn't that just great, that? I wonder if Disney's involved with this. Now, another one too is to do with Alternativa, a citizens' village of alternatives where individual, collective, local and systemic alternative solutions to climate change and energy crisis are promoted. And it gives you the goals. And spread the message of climate emergency. Oh, it's an emergency, I didn't know that. I had an emergency though, I think last year when my umbrella, because it was awfully wet, my umbrella got holes in it. It says, raise awareness amongst the general public and elected politicians. Well, they're all on the take for it anyway. They all know it's PC if they want to get up the ladder. And it says the necessity to rapidly and readily cut greenhouse gas emissions. Highlight the dramatic consequences of not reaching an ambitious, effective, binding and fair international agreement on climate change. Fight the probable feeling of resignation, helplessness, and therefore the demobilization which could be triggered by the seriousness and importance of the climate challenge. You know, there's folk actually committing suicide on that. It was 2 or 3 years ago, a couple did it, and it's in the paper. The future looks so depressing to them when you'll all be living in deserts and stuff, and roasting, you know, frying in the sand, so they kill themselves. That's how it can affect some people, this propaganda. Fight the probable feeling of resignation and so on, and show that solutions exist, that they're ready to be implemented, and they can create jobs. Maybe you can be carrying, you know, on your back, maybe in a backpack, you can carry fertilizer from one little place to the next as you walk along the road, you know, and pick up the horse dew and stuff. Yeah. Call on everyone to implement without delay the necessary social, energy and ecological transitions in order to avoid the deep and irreversible consequences of climate change. Repetitive climate change. Climate's all, the weather, you know, weather on the news was always about climate change. You could be sunny one day and rainy the next. Boy, I talk, this is a beauty, isn't it? What a mind-bending job this really is, this whole thing. And they go on about geoengineering in it, and the carbon markets, of course, for the big boys. Do you know your governments give them, the CEOs, the corporations, they give them millions of dollars worth of free carbon credits to start off the trading. They did it all across Europe too. You the peasant, get nothing, of course. You just pay for all, but they get that to start it off. You know, money for nothing and your kicks for free. So I'll put that up tonight as well, and I'll also put up a PDF, an Alternativa. I'll put that up tonight as well. But you're surprised just how everybody's on board with it. It's taken years to get them all up and running, you see, all these things. And again, to institutionalize the agenda through all phases of society and institutions of governance, as I like to call it. Another article here, climate justice pilgrims begin 200-mile journey from London to Paris. And I got the religions on their pilgrimages to Gaia, I guess, you know. Yeah. And of course they started years ago getting all the top, you know, pastors and religions on board with this, and then the pastors preach to their flocks, and the flocks go, bah, and then they say, okay, and they go along with the agenda, you see. This is around 50 pilgrims have set off from central London this morning to start of a 200-mile journey to Paris. I hope they're walking, because I don't want all that greenhouse gas coming out of them if they're not, you know, or at least take the jet or something, where they will call on world leaders from 190 nations at the UN Climate Change Conference, COP21, to agree a fair, ambitious and binding agreement on tackling changes in the weather. The London to Paris pilgrimage organised by the Church of England, Anglican Church, and Christian Aid, Tear Fund and CAFOD is one of a number of similar pilgrimages taking place throughout Europe as churches continue to put pressure on global politicians. See, they used everybody, you see, to achieve a good deal for the world's poor. And of course, it's got nothing to do with the weather. And a lot of the left-wingers have been sold an idea, well, you'll get all that tax money coming into the UN and they'll redistribute the wealth across the world to the poor. And it ain't going to go there, folks. You know, it's all going to go through Al Gore's trading, carbon trading thing, and into the Rothschilds 1-2 in Switzerland. I read the articles a few years back on that, to their personal bank, and so on and so on. And to get you into austerity, actually, until you're really poor. But they won't call it that. No, you're not poor, you're just austere, you see. We walk in solidarity for climate justice for the world's poorest and most vulnerable. We're all aware of the impact of climate change, and we can't be the first generation to not only turn away from our responsibilities to protect the planet. The Church of England's lead bishop on the environment, the Right Reverend Nicholas Holtom, Bishop of Salisbury, told the pilgrims and a congregation of supporters at a service in St. Martin in the Fields, Trafalgar Square, before the pilgrimage got underway. These 50 pilgrims are highlighting the need for those involved in the climate change talks to reach an agreement that moves us towards a fairer, low-carbon future at Paris and beyond. This is last month, a different group of pilgrims set off from Rome to Paris in a pilgrimage organised by the World Council of Churches. That was set up by Rockefeller, years ago, to bring all the churches, to basically standardize all the Protestant churches and give them all the same indoctrination until there's no differences really amongst what they're prattling about. It says the Lutheran World Federation and ACT Alliance. Earlier this month they reached the WCC's Ecumenical Centre in Zurich, Switzerland, where they held a panel discussion about the approach that faith communities are making to COP21. Well, why just use a Skype conference, for God's sake, and save all that CO2 getting burned by their jet fuel? All panelists agree that COP21 will just be a relevant milestone and longer journey for climate justice. We're going about climate court, folks. Eh? You're going to get judges in charge of invisible gases. But we always knew they were full of gas to start with, don't we? And then they prattle on and on and on about how they're going to mobilize the masses, basically, through the centre of Paris and so on, ensuring the church has a strong voice and they're around the talks. After months of hard work, talk about fasting and all the rest of it. Well, it's going to make a big difference, as they fast. After months of hard work, we're now on our way. James Buchanan, organiser of the London to Paris pilgrimage, said, this month's service is a reminder of what's at stake at the upcoming UN Climate Change Conference. There's no planet B, so please do join us in the journey to Paris for climate justice. All these terms dreamed up by the marketers. Pilgrims will be staying in churches and in the houses of church members along the route, following in a centuries old tradition. What a joke, eh? What a joke. Another one too about this similar topic. Pray and act. Call for the climate justice. Lead up to UN's Climate Conference Paris, join the growing call by people of faith for climate action. You see? I've often wondered, if everything's by the will of God, then little people asking or demanding even for God to change his mind on something and help them, does it really work? You see? Because if after all it's predetermined, then are you going against God by telling him to change it all? And why won't God change it all anyway, if he wants to? You see? But you see, today all these churches are not churches at all, these Christian ones especially. They're social clubs. Social clubs, folks. where folks of similar, often class, like to go and meet each other and their little club, basically. And they're all preaching happy gospels. Happy gospels. They don't want bad news. They want happy gospels, you see. And, well, what can you say? Eh? According to the COP21 website, world leaders will work to complete a new international agreement on the climate applicable to all countries. This is take action, sign the Prayers for Paris petition, which is offered by Citizens for Public Justice, a partner of the United Church. See all these different organizations work together. Invite friends, family, and members of your faith community to sign too. Your message will be carried by people of faith going to Paris. Reflect on creation care with a worship service on November 29th, or any time before or during COP21. I give you a little background, it says here. And then they give you the usual fake stuff that's been put out by the IPCC from the United Nations. That they just won't change it. Again, it's written in stone like the law of Moses or something. And they talk about international energy agencies and their propaganda's on board with it and so on and so on. And then I'll go into from Copenhagen to Paris, cities and mayors. See your cities and mayors from Canada, the States, and every other country are leading the way on climate action. So there's an association of them. See, a compact of mayors and all that. Do you know they're all involved in it as well, your local areas? I say every institution is involved in this. It's already done. Today, the C40 Cities Climate Leadership Group and research partner Arup released Climate Action in Megacities, a groundbreaking and definitive assessment of how the world's leading mayors have taken on the urgent challenge of climate change. So it says CAM3 presents major new insights into the current status, latest trends and future potential for climate action at the city level. Since the last mayor COP in Copenhagen, the C40 cities, that's Bloomberg's group, have taken 10,000 climate actions, a doubling of actions in just 6 years. And mind you, all these big boys at the top are going to benefit incredibly from all the carbon trading and so on. They say I'm committed to reduce their CO2 emissions by 3, they give you the equivalents and so on. As the world's most extensive quantitative study of city climate action, CAM3 documents and analysis, these actions demonstrate the ability of mayors to share knowledge across geographic, political and economic boundaries. Most of them can't even run their own little area, never mind know their boundaries of it. Do you know that? Anyway, I'll put that up as well, and I'll put up 2 municipal resources for adapting to climate change from Partners for Climate Protection. It's also got all the green pictures and everything. It's all nicey green, super green too. And it's from the ICLEI. Now, I gave talks on that a few years ago on the radio. It's local governments for sustainability, they call themselves. They kind of grafted themselves on all your little local governments for towns and cities and all that. And they've got the Green Municipal Fund and things like that on the go. But they've also got one in Canada, and they like to change the names of them for different places so you don't think it's just one big global thing. Anyway, it's Federation of Canadian Municipalities here, is in here, and the Partners for Climate Protection, the PCP. You see? I'll put that up there. And it's got all the different impacts of climate change on Canadian municipalities, linkages to climate mitigation programs, adapting to climate change in Canada and abroad, communities undertaking adaptation activities, resources used in impact assessment, adaptation planning, risk assessment tools, scientific resources, networks, all the networks here, summaries of adaptation activities in selected communities. This is pure Agenda 21, folks. You see, and under the guise of the weather, you see, weather changes. It's a good PDF, but I will show you, because what this one shows you, even for Sudbury, little place near me, is across the whole country in Canada and in the States as well. It's exactly the same program, you see. And it gives the explanation of what exactly they're supposed to be. It's the Parts for Climate Protection partnership between the Federation of Canadian Municipalities and the ICLEI. You see, Local Governments for Sustainability. PCP is a Canadian component of ICLEI's Cities for Climate Protection campaign. Involves more than 900 communities internationally. There you go, international. In Canada, over 180 municipal governments. These are municipal governments who are involved in the PCP program, which uses a 5-milestone framework to guide communities in assessing and reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Did you vote for any of these groups? Did you? And it says municipal officials have expressed a need for more information. No, they've been approached, you see. Resources and tools on climate change adaptation. I can adapt to it, you know. When it's freezing in the winter, I put on extra clothing. And in the summer, I have less on, you see, because it's kind of hot. And if it rains, I put on a raincoat and rubber boots, you see. Things like that. So I've already adapted. But again, every generation before me for thousands of years has adapted pretty much the same way, if they could afford the raincoat. So that's one of them. And then I put up even one from the Department of Defense, and the 2014 Climate Change Adaptation Roadmap. Oh, wow. You know, we should petition our governments to get the same rain gear, and winter gear for that matter, as the military get. I mean, they put on their rain gear, and it doesn't rip when you raise your arms up like the cheap stuff that we have to buy from China, you know. They get the better Chinese stuff, much thicker, and there's fabric in it, so it won't rip, you see, when they raise your hands up to do some kind of work or something. And when you put things in your pockets, the seam doesn't fall away in the second day, or maybe even the first day. Is that asking too much? Never mind their winter clothing, eh? Whoa. But I'll put this PDF up too from the Department of Defense. And of course they bring all the problems of the world onto the global instability and extreme weather events, and they bring on pandemic disease and disputes over refugees and resources and destruction by natural disasters and etc. Hunger, poverty, conflict. All the movies have been churned out for years are in this Department of Defense PDF. And that's why they churned out all those movies, to prepare you for all this stuff, you see. The nonsense. All the nonsense. And again, too, they're actually saying it could even cause terrorism. Yeah. And things like that, eh? It could just make you do strange things. That's why Bill Clinton had all these different women, you see. It was the weather made him do it, you see. Things like that. And I love too how they they have it's quite funny. Some things just make me crack up. But it says here that it's a threat multiplier. You see, the weather's a threat multiplier, and it's a cause of terrorism for sure. The weather, you see. And a changing climate will have real impacts on the military and the way it executes its missions. Could be called upon more often to support civil authorities. Well, we know that's going to come with austerity and folk get a bit hungry. And it says here, where is it now? Oh yeah. Well, scientists are converging towards consensus on future climate projections. From the same computers fed the fake same information. Uncertainty remains, but this cannot be excused for delaying actions. Every day our military deals with global uncertainty. So does the public. Our planners know that, as military strategist Karl von Clausewitz wrote. I love how they always insert these things, because they get folk to do biographies and that, and they put in fake statements by people. And what he said, supposedly, is, all action must, to a certain extent, be planned in a mere twilight. It says, it's in this context that the Department of Defense is releasing a climate change adaptation roadmap, you see. And our first step is planning for these challenges to identify the effects of climate change on the department with tangible and specific metrics, using the best available science. Well, you won't get it using these computers with the fake information on them that they will not add anything else into, like the sun and the impact of the weather from the sun. And this article too. Here's one, the Rural Climate Network, are also at Paris. All these groups I'm mentioning are at Paris, you see. It's already a done deal. The ideal for the Rural Climate Network was born at the 2011 National Rural Assembly. Did you know you had one? During the conference, a climate change working group formed in response to the lack of collaboration among rural communities regarding climate change adaptation and mitigation. See, rural communities are more sensible. They're not living in this neurotic hyperness of the city, you see. So you can actually think and reason. So because they wouldn't go along with it, rural communities, they just went over their head, you see. And they formed this fake working group. And it says, rural natural resource dependent communities are particularly vulnerable to the effects of climate change. Like, tell farmers for thousands of years that's been any different. As they're often the most closely linked to natural ecosystems for their economic, social and environmental well-being. The Rural Climate Network is intended to foster collaboration. See, you need us. That's what they're telling you in the rural folk. You need us to foster collaboration that will eventually get at the complex issues that create rural injustices. The Rural Climate Network advances practical strategies to adapt to and mitigate the current and anticipated effects of climate change across the nation. They pad everything with nonsense, don't they? They can't get to the point. But that's what they do, eh? Like, you almost tell what's been written by a bureaucratic mind. It says the work connects rural leaders in order to generate and respond to state and national climate change policies. The goals: to provide a venue for broad cross-sector collection of rural voices and organizations. Again, this mass organization thing. To work together to define and respond to climate change policies at state and national level. To ensure that rural voices become a leading force in the development of climate change policy and solutions in their communities. No, they pick the leaders, you see. This is the Soviet system, folks. And the Soviet system meant rule by councils. And on the face of communism, every group, if you were a farmer, you were in your farmers group. If you were in a factory worker, you were in your factory workers group, and things like that. And they all had little councils appointed to them, not by them. And the leader of the NGO, basically NGOs, you see, the leader was appointed by the Politburo at the top to say what the Politburo wanted to hear. And this is exactly the same system. It's new and improved communism. To ensure that any market-based policies developed actually contribute to greenhouse gas emission reduction and provide real benefits to rural residents and their communities. To promote changes in legislation that will assist rural communities in developing adequate responses to the current and anticipated effects of climate change on their communities, surrounding landscapes and natural resources. To engage the next generation of rural leaders in a dialogue about climate change and ensure their perspectives are informing. In other words, you're brainwashed, to make sure that you're properly brainwashed, and included in state and national policy recommendations. And then they go to the grassroots networks, all the usual terminology. Activate a network of organizations that can promote progressive climate policies, laws, rules, regulations, rules. Provide on-the-ground examples that demonstrate evidence of climate change and showcase the issues, opportunities for the big boys that will get all your tax money to invest in fake green projects, and exist across rural communities and landscapes to educate broad audiences and inform actionable climate policy. More effectively share and disseminate best practices in forestry, farming, So again, here they come into your farm and the whole bit and tell you how to do things. And same in forestry, your private land, you leave that tree alone. And ranching as they relate to climate change, see. Provide resources and partnerships for county commissions, mayors, service providers and extension officers to work with communities, landowners, city planners and others to engage in a climate change issue and develop adaptation plans. I'll put this up tonight as well. I mean, you can only stomach so much per night, really, can't you? Even that's a bit much what I've gone through already. And the Climate Summit for Local Leaders gives cities a strong platform at COP21. That was back in June, this article. And it goes on about the Mayor of Paris, Anne Hidalgo, and Michael R. Bloomberg, the UN Secretary General's Special Envoy for Cities and Climate Change, announced they will co-chair the Climate Summit for Local Leaders. See, everything that's an institution has already been taken over. I say the school, there's even some folk from school boards across the world gone there, etc., etc. And their children, the school children. A show for the public to watch on TV. Oh, look at that. The children are there singing nice little Gaia hymns, Isn't that sweet? Oy. And also, Caritas International is for, and this one here, I think it's a Catholic church as well. They're all in it as well. And they want a legally binding climate agreement. Also, more details on the ICLEI, who they are. There's for local governments for sustainability is the world's leading network of over 1,000 cities, towns and metropolises committed to building a sustainable future. It's a non-governmental organisation. But massively funded, obviously. And they go on about their usual sustainable future. That also means depopulation for those that don't quite get it, folks. This is ICLEI's first global programs were Local Agenda 21. Think global, act local, and then act local, think global. A program promoting participating governments and local sustainable development planning in cities for climate protection, etc., etc., etc. I'll put that up tonight as well. Federation of Canadian Municipalities. Now, I use Canada, like you can use it across the States and Britain and every other country in the world. Because it's all the same organizations, folks. So your little municipalities are all on board with it too. And it's got Union of Canadian Municipalities and Dominion Conference of Mayors as well. The merger of mayors with it as well. And local government organisation, their legal status is non-profit corporation. So anyone who you elect should not be involved in this, folks, unless they put it out to you first. You're the taxpayer, not the non-governmental organisation. You are the taxpayer. It's supposed to represent you. And it's informative as far as how many things are on board with them, of course, as you all know. And look at some of its history there as well. I can read that for yourself. And then FCM joins official Canadian delegation to COP21 climate conference in Paris. As Canadian municipalities will play an important role as leaders from around the world gather in Paris for the COP21 conference. The Federation of Canadian Municipalities will officially represent local governments as part of the Canadian delegation during the conference taking part from November 30th through December the 11th. Municipal representation on the Canadian delegation also includes the mayors of Vancouver, Montreal and Toronto. Canadian local expertise and display, etc. It shows you all that stuff. And gives you more of the agenda, the one agenda, which they've all sworn to, obviously. And then there's the Green Municipal Fund as well, for those who don't know there actually is one. It'd be quite interesting for you to go through all that too if you really want to know more and more about it. And for this week, lastly, it'll be FCM Partners for Climate Protection. Partners for Climate Protection, PCP programs, a network of Canadian municipality governments that have committed to reducing the gases and so on, and acting on climate change. Since the program's inception in 1994, over 250 municipalities have joined PCP, making a public commitment to reduce emissions. PCP membership covers all provinces and territories and accounts for more than 65% of the Canadian population. And it's just the Canadian component of ICLEI, Cities for Climate Protection Network. I think they're changed their name to CCP now. That's ICLEI. After the last outburst from the public, after folk like myself and other folk complaining about what they're up to in the US and elsewhere, and they actually backed off one of their massive projects, this non-governmental organization that's helping to rule your lives. You know, back in the Cold War days, I hate to call it Communist Party, but the Communist Party of the West had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of front groups who didn't know, some of them, that they were a front group pushing the ideals of communism. And a lot of the churches were involved as well. Nothing changes. But the thing with that was it showed you the incredible power of planned and taught and expertly taught organization, how to organize. When they went to a different area, they'd organize. And this is just the transformation, the same system, often by the same people, definitely at the top, because the West created communism for the Soviet era. And it's the same folk running it with the same systems, folks. Same folk. And it works awfully well. But again, it's very deceptive because so many of these NGOs sound so official. That's why they use official sounding terms, but they're private and they're NGOs. You see? So, but when it sounds official, you transfer your power to them, think, oh, well, I guess they're government. But no, they're not. No, they're not. So don't be misled by things. Think for yourself. And remember, too, I've got even more from years ago on the January 21 program in more detail. Back in the archive section of cuttingthroughthematrix.com. And you'll hear many talks on it too. It's kind of boring, of course, and it's repetitive, I know, but you're going through the massive changes now where it gets signed into law. And they're going to implement it very, very soon. Step by step by step. And drastic changes are coming your way. They've said that already. Drastic changes on the way you live. And you won't be too happy about that, believe you me. So, yep. And another thing you can do too is when you're using the archives at cuttingthroughthematrix.com, you could help send a couple of bucks my way, folks. It would certainly help. And there's books and discs there to buy as well at cuttingthroughthematrix.com, and the page on how to order, and that is all explained quite effectively and simply. So from Hamish myself from Ontario, Canada, it's good night. And may your God or your gods go with you.